Good morning or good afternoon. I'm Kevin Briscoe, Communications Manager for Vet Jobs and Military Spouse Jobs. They are the next generation in job placement and training for military members and their families. Um, these two organizations are powered by our legacy organizations, Corporate America Supports You and the Military Spouse Corporate Career Network. And while these names are pretty new and it'll take some getting used to, they do better reflect what we do and how we do it. And with that, welcome to our Founders Friday, where we're going to highlight some trailblazers who, with grace and dignity and passion and fortitude, add incredible value to our military community. Each third Friday of the month, our president and founder, Deb Pluppel, will have in-depth conversations with those folks who are really providing great insights and resources to our military community. So today's guest is Bonnie Carroll, president and founder of the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors, or TAPS, an organization that provides care, welfare, and support to those who have lost a loved one in military service. So just have a couple of housekeeping notes. If you're with us today via our Zoom meeting, please mute your microphone and disable your camera if you haven't already done so. And if you have any questions for Deb, you can, and Bonnie, you can certainly use the chat feature, which you can activate by hovering over the bottom middle of your screen, and a chat bubble will pop up there. So with that, and oh, by the way, this is also being broadcast live on our Facebook, our Military Spouse Jobs Facebook page. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Deb to intro Bonnie and get the conversation started. Deb.
Oh, thank you, Kevin. Welcome everyone to our Founders Friday conversation with Bonnie Carroll. Bonnie Carroll has the Presidential Medal of Freedom recipient, as she's a military veteran, and we'll touch more upon that in a moment. She's the former White House staffer in 3 administrations, a published author, and since 1994, the leader of the foremost organization for providing services and comfort to those who have lost a relative or loved one in the military. With that, I'd like to bring on Bonnie Carroll. Hi, Bonnie.
Hi, Deb. Thanks so much for having me today.
Thank you, Bonnie. It's such a privilege. I want to get to the first question, Bonnie, and that's your military career. I was wondering if you could tell us a lot about that career and some of the most amazing transition I've ever seen.
Oh, gosh. Well, thank you so much. And I had the honor of growing up with a mother who had served as an aviator in World War II. And, it was just one of the most important parts of her life. She died cancer when I was just a teenager. So, it was a memory of hers that I really cherished. And so I wanted to serve myself and follow in that legacy. So joined the Air National Guard. And over the course of 30 years, served in various capacities in the Guard and then the Air Force Reserve, and just really found that to be one of the most meaningful things that I've done. It really was a chance to serve my country, and in some cases serve on tours of active duty, like after 9/11 when so many of us were mobilized.
30 years, Bonnie, that's a long time in the military, and I'm not trying to date you, but in going back 30 years, that was trailblazing for a female. Am I wrong about that?
That's really interesting. I actually, in one time in my career, served as the EEO officer, graduated from the Defense Equal Opportunity Management Institute. And you're right, things really have transformed tremendously since that time. But after moving up here to Alaska, the Alaska Guard at that time, even back in the late 80s, early 90s, was 1/3 female.
Wow. So
through an operational readiness inspection where the head of every single section was a woman, and the best part was nobody noticed. It wasn't until we got up on stage at the outbrief when the unit had gotten an outstanding, and people went, whoa, wait a minute. But it's just been really great to be in a career where I've been able to serve in so many different capacities.
You really have. You really have. I want to touch on this Presidential Medal of Freedom award. I don't even know if award is the right term, so please dive in and make sure that I had the right, because I don't know a lot of people who have that, Bonnie.
Well, that was presented in 2015 by President Barack Obama, and it really was a recognition of the sacrifices made by the nation. And it was, I accepted that on behalf of all of our families at TAPS, all those whose lives had been forever changed by a traumatic loss in the armed forces. And one of the most meaningful parts of that day, that White House ceremony, was that our surviving families were at home watching it on television and doing selfies and really feeling part of it. So it was a family event.
That gives me goosebumps. 3 White House administrations. Tell me about that.
Well, I was very, very blessed to serve with 3 wonderful leaders. And in fact, President Reagan introduced me to my husband.
Oh.
I'm very grateful to him for that. And there was he introduced
you to your husband?
And there was a movie made out of it, actually.
That's right.
Yeah, Big Miracle with Drew Barrymore and John Krasinski. Dermot Mulroney played my husband, but it's a story of how we met. And so in that movie, I'm the person playing the White House staffer.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Published author. Tell me about your books.
Well, I've written chapters in a large number of books on coping with grief and dealing with trauma and loss. But I had the opportunity to co-author a book with Dr. Alan Walfelt on healing your grieving military heart. And that really is a wonderful book just for the lay person on coping with loss. And it's written so simply with 100 different ideas. It's got a little quote and a verse for every section. And then what we called Carpe Diem, an action step you can do right then and there. So it's been now translated. It's translated into Dari for the Afghan community, into Ukrainian for our Ukrainian partners, and a couple of other languages. So we're really, really grateful that just those simple tips have been shared around the world.
Around the world, Bonnie, in different languages. Wow. Would you tell me about the VA Advisory Committee on Families, Caregivers, and Survivors charged by Senator Elizabeth Dole?
That really is a leading effort that now is in its second term of leaders across the community who are engaged in efforts to support families, caregivers, survivors. We bring forward initiatives that are really key challenges today. Senator Dole has done so much, as we know, in the caregiver space to really raise awareness of the struggles of our caregivers. And then TAPS is there for the survivors. Folks like General Mike Lennington from Wounded Warrior Project bring the voice of the wounded forward into that. We've got a really fantastic group of leaders who meet quarterly and prepare recommendations that go from the Secretary of Veterans Affairs
to the top.
Right to the top.
That is amazing. I want to take you back to 1994, okay? And I think that's when the founding of TAPS, okay? And it's really, Bonnie, and if I choke up, it's okay. I'm 63 years old. I know. It's okay. Being live makes us both a little vulnerable. And we didn't rehearse this. And so they're going to see Bonnie and Deb pretty raw, if you will, with emotion, because you can't talk about TAPS and not have that emotion. But in founding's TAPS, it's an outgrowth of your personal tragedy. Can you elaborate, Bonnie, as you can, on that tragedy and how it has informed your opinion on how important it is to reach out to folks who have lost loved ones in our beloved military? I know.
So much, Deb, and I so appreciate that. And you know,
I had to read it. I couldn't.
Well, there. So, the early '90s. Gosh, my husband and I were just living this wonderful, incredible military life. He had just been promoted to brigadier general. I had a great career in the Air National Guard and also with a great civilian job, and just life was wonderful. Really, everything was going so well, and we were so just excited about the future. And then in November of that year, that all just came to a complete stop when the aircraft that he and 7 other soldiers in the mountains of Alaska. It was just a routine flight. It was a beautiful day. Here, it was not, and I'm in Anchorage right now. It was not so much where they were flying, and weather closed in, and they went down and all perished. And it just, I had all of this experience being a military officer myself, and also in my civilian job working with nonprofits, ironically, who cared for those who had suffered loss. I was on the board of a group for homicide survivors, and in my work in the Alaska Department of Law, worked with those affected by homicide loss and victims of violent crime. So my first thought was, wow, isn't it great? I've had all this training and I'm prepared and I'll be able to help my family and help everybody and we'll get through this and it'll be okay. And Deb, that little fantasy lasted about 30 seconds. And I just could not breathe. So it really was just, trying to then just even put one foot in front of the other, just take a breath. And as I came out of that just paralyzed state, finally started looking around for the kind of groups I knew existed for other types of loss. There was a group for law enforcement officers called COPS and a group, for homicide survivors. So I went to those groups thinking grief is grief. And I found, you know what? I don't understand their culture. I don't speak their language and they don't know what I'm going through. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't until I reconnected with the other widows from that crash. They became my little peer group. And we joined wonderful organizations like Gold Star Wives and Society of Military Widows, but they were membership associations that were so beautifully focused on securing benefits. We couldn't find that group that was just the safe space to curl up and grieve, just a place to honor our loved ones and share our stories. And so it became apparent that was a gap. And 2 years later, after doing a lot of conversations with a lot of folks and senior leaders and other survivors and partner organizations and everyone I could possibly find, TAPS was launched in October of 1994. And almost immediately it was embraced by DOD and VA. And today is that organization now that is the go-to whenever someone dies in the military.
Can you talk a little bit, Bonnie, through that grief, how you were to execute the mission and the phases of that execution? Being a founder myself of an organization for 16 years, I thought MSCCN and Casey would be one thing, and they've always been one thing, but how it got there. The many roads that you'll go. So how did you execute it through your grief? And then the other question is, Bonnie, do you ever recover from the grief? That'll be a later question, but how did you start a business through grief?
Oh, Deb, what a wonderful question. And I'd love to talk about this. I just want to start out by saying it's an interesting thing. Many people think that grief, they equate it with a mental illness. People say, oh, you should see someone, you should get counseling. And grief is not a mental illness. It's not a physical injury, but it is profoundly debilitating. I wish we could just take a pill or put a bandage on it and it would have this nice, neat progression. But Deb, we only grieve because we love.
Yeah.
When we hear about someone in the news, some tragedy that's occurred, we may feel sad, but we don't grieve that loss because we didn't have that emotional connection. So going from the premise that grief really is about love, how can we then honor that love? And how can we continue and redefine the relationship that we have with that person? Because they may have physically died, but they didn't stop loving us. And we will always have a relationship with them. This is especially important for the kids that are a part of TAPS. For kids, that's always going to be mom or dad or big brother, big sister. They will always be in their lives. And this is part of now their life story, and they are the living legacy. So TAPS really is this wonderful outgrowth of that love. And what a blessing to come together with others. And I'm so excited just to, I feel like it's new members of a family. And it really, we talk about our TAPS family, and it feels like that. So it's energizing, it's inspiring, it's fun, it's great to hear these wonderful stories and meet these American heroes who we get to know through their loved ones. And it's such a blessing, and just humbling to be, charged with having that care available. We have a 24/7 helpline. We have a survivor.
I was just going to ask that, your 24/7 hotline.
It is a
Let's
wonderful.
talk about that.
Well, it's staffed entirely by what I call peer professionals. Survivors, military spouses, veterans who really understand because they've lived it, but they also have the training and the expertise.
There you go.
Everybody has the ASSIST, the Applied Suicide Intervention Skills Training. Everyone has degrees in social work, psychology, counseling. So they're listening really with their heart, but they're also really able to support with their head. It's absolutely.
Could you repeat that, Bonnie?
So our peer professionals are really, able, because of the training that they have and their education, they can listen with their heart because they
listen with their heart.
Yeah, but they can also build a plan of support with their head, with their knowledge and their training and their skills.
Do you find that as you did, I just have to be blunt with this question, Bonnie. Did you ever think TAPS would be, and I hate to use the word powerhouse when we're talking about this heartfelt thing, but it is a powerhouse. Did you know it was going to be this when you first started?
Deb, I really knew that there was such a big void in this spot. And when I first, I made the brochure and the logo and all of that. And you know how it is in the beginning.
I do.
And I took all my little materials and went off to the Pentagon. And, first briefing, when I put everything down, the leaders in the room looked at that, and the one person said, "Oh yeah, it's a great organization, very helpful, always been wonderful." And I went, okay. So everyone I found actually assumed it had always existed because it was such a natural. So
that is very interesting, Bonnie.
I got to tell you a really quick story. The first time, it was maybe our first or second, maybe our second or third National Gathering of Survivors, which now we're in our 26th annual. But we had the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Shalikashvili, who came to speak. And it was, oh my gosh, such a big deal. But you know what? The families sitting at his head table, this big round table, weren't so interested in him as they were interested in talking with each other and sharing stories of their loved ones, and just feeling so great that now finally was a group of people who got it, who understood, and who were going to let them share and wanted to hear it. So when General Shalikashvili got up to speak, it was just amazing. He left his prepared text on the table, which threw his aides into apoplexy. but he said, I've been thinking all day coming here, if there needed to be an organization, by God, the military would have created it. And he said, now being here tonight, being among you, he said, I get it. He said, we, the military, can't do for you what you must do for each other. He said, we can render final honors. We can administer the benefits. We can provide that final resting place, but we cannot sit with you in your grief. And we cannot relate as another mother, another widow, another brother, sister, or child would do. So he said, what I can do is tell you that, this is everybody who suffers a loss is going to be connected to TAPS, and from here on forward. And then, Deb, this was the most amazing thing. His wife, Joan, was sitting next to me, tears coming, she was so moved by what he'd said. And he said, then shifted, and he started talking about when his first wife had died 25 years earlier. No, his staff didn't know he was a widower. Joan knew, of course, that he had been married before, because they'd been married 20 years and had a child and everything. But nobody knew. And he went into the whole story of his grief And Joan leaned over to me and she just said, he has never spoken of this. And in that room, that night, he felt safe enough in a room that he knew would understand his grief, that he was able to share it. And it was just, everyone just hugged him and loved on him. And from that moment on, we have had absolute shoulder to shoulder support with military casualty.
Bonnie, I see it as a way to keep the person that died alive in the hearts and the minds, appropriately. That's what I'm getting from this. Am I on the right track there?
100%, absolutely. We have a saying that love lives on.
Oh.
That love transcends the loss, that our loved ones continue to inspire us, that we are their living legacies. So you're absolutely right. And that's just so liberating. There used to be this psychology that you had to say goodbye or close the door,
yeah,
or whatever it was. And that's so unrealistic, because that just isn't the way it works.
I have to say this in the light of COVID, if I can get this out now. COVID family, this is not in our questions, Bonnie, so I'm going for it. With COVID, how do you think they're going to grieve not being able to be with the loved ones? And how do you see, and I know we've had military families who have lost people and not loved ones, not been there in the hospital. Is that going to be a harder grief, Bonnie? Is that going to be a different grief? What would you offer that?
Yeah, I'm so glad that you asked about that.
Thank you, because
Well, think about military families have lived with that anxiety, that fear, that separation, sending your loved one off and not knowing if they're going to come home or if they're going to come home the same as they were. And now everyone in America is feeling that just when their loved one goes out to the grocery store, and they may be separated at the time of the death of their loved one. So TAPS has actually leaned into that and created an entire section of our website called taps.org/COVID. And then there's an extension of that, COVID/Together, that offers grief support and something that we call the COVID Mourners Bill of Rights. To know that no matter how a loss occurs, that you have the right to find meaning and purpose, that you have the right to honor your loved one's life, that you have the right for ritual. That ritual may look very different, but we have the right to perform that ritual in memory and in honor of our loved ones.
So that is so meaningful, Bonnie, because as military spouses and military moms and fathers, and when we have people deployed, that's our biggest fear, is they're going to be dying alone. And here we have a country where military families, are dying alone. So would you repeat that? Program, Bonnie?
Yes, it's taps.org/COVID/together. But just go to the taps.org/COVID and please take advantage of those resources. There's wonderful, wonderful support available.
And I would say to any funder who is listening to this, please fund, please donate. You have a great donate section there, Bonnie. So any questions, call Bonnie for sure. Well, I will tell you that you have policy level, you have military level, you have a heart that is just pure gold, Bonnie. And at this point, what I want to ask you to do, talk about TAPS to me. What do you think is TAPS' future moving forward?
We are constantly evolving. We're looking at trends, and
let's talk about a trend, Bonnie. Let's talk about a trend.
Yeah,
I like that.
Last year, we had just shy of 7,000 new survivors who came to us for care. It's an average of 20 a day. I mean, it really is a tremendous number. And of those, it was almost an equal number of 29% lost loved ones to suicide, and just
Did you repeat that number, Bonnie?
29% lost loved ones to suicide, and another 28% lost a loved one to illness. So in leaning into that, we're providing tremendous care for those who have lost loved ones to suicide. We call it postvention. And it's helping families cope with the trauma of suicide loss, particularly if they were present at the suicide or discovered the body. And now we also have a program for illness loss survivors, but going beyond that, to recognize the fact that they may have been caregivers for a period of time, maybe even years before the death occurred. And how do we gently bring someone from being a caregiver to now being a survivor? So recognizing the needs of those communities, recognizing, who our families are and what particular needs they may have. So we're just constantly looking at that. We have an impact report. If you go to taps.org/mission, our impact report from this past year looks different than the one from the year before, because we are adjusting and leaning into the needs of our families today.
Bonnie, what type of person can be served by TAPS? Are there qualifiers for membership? Is there, who can come to TAPS and be served?
Deb, that is the best question of all, because that's what sets us apart, really, because we provide peer-based emotional support, 24/7 helpline, casework assistance, community-based care. It is available free of charge to all those grieving the death of a military loved one. So if you have any affiliation with the military at all, and you are grieving the loss of someone you love, regardless of what your official legal relationship is, please, please come to us for support. Please know that you have a home, you have a family. There is love and understanding that is available for you.
So we're talking, a lot of people may think that it's just for active duty or for recently. This is for all wars, all military people, all people who are grieving the loss of a military person. That's amazing.
And Deb, thank you. I'm so grateful you clarified that, because if you are grieving the death of someone you love, who during their life, they stepped forward to put on the cloth of this nation, to serve their country, we are there for you with love and support and comfort and resources.
So Bonnie, let me repeat this. If at 63 years old, if my father dies and he was a Korean War veteran, I can come to you for that comfort?
Of course.
I didn't know that.
And we have a lot of military families who have a loss of a child, the loss of the civilian spouse, the loss of a parent. And we embrace them. We will help them also find the additional resources and support. For example, there's a wonderful partner organization for SIDS death that we work with very closely, and we can connect military families to those organizations that we work with all the time. So we're going to just wrap all the support that we can around that family.
Bonnie, we need to have you on a couple more times. I'm just going to put you on the spot right there. Kevin, I know that we're coming upon the time. Bonnie, I just want to tell you that I would like to be a part of TAPS in any way you need me. I'm there. I'm there. You have me. And Kevin, thank you, Bonnie. Yes, I didn't mean to interrupt, Bonnie.
You've been a dear friend, a wonderful supporter. I feel just part of your community, and I'm so grateful for that. But please, for all of you who are listening, visit taps.org, and please let us know how we can be of support to you.
Thank you, Bonnie. Kevin, back to you.
Thank you, Bonnie. Thank you, Deb. That was a great conversation. You could really tell that you guys have an extraordinary rapport with one another, and you are absolutely passionate in what you do, and that comes through it came through greatly in this broadcast. But that's it for this month's Founders Friday. Again, thank you, Deb. Thank you, Bonnie. Thank everybody who's tuned in. This is a great conversation on a great and a vital topic. Our next Founders Friday broadcast is slated for Friday, August 21st at 2 Central Time. And Deb is going to be talking with Beth Conlon, who is the Senior Program Manager for Military Spouse Programs at Amazon. So we didn't have any questions in queue. Someone did asked for the website on our Facebook live stream, and we did tell them that was taps.org. And with that, we're going to sign off, and we'll see you in August. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.